The sun beat down mercilessly on the main street of Dry Creek, a small frontier town where tumbleweeds rolled lazily across dusty roads and the scent of horses and leather hung thick in the air. Most days were quiet, the kind of quiet where the townspeople could hear the distant whistle of the wind through the canyons and the soft creak of a wagon wheel on the dirt. But that morning, the quiet was broken by the rhythmic sound of hooves approaching from the outskirts. Clara appeared over the hill, silhouetted against the rising sun, riding a chestnut mare that moved with effortless grace. She was unlike anyone the townspeople had seen before. Her hat, slightly tilted, shaded eyes that glimmered with determination and a touch of melancholy. A scarf around her neck fluttered lightly in the wind, hinting at a past that was carefully kept hidden. She wore a simple yet tidy dress that suggested practicality over fashion, yet even in her simplicity, there was a quiet elegance that drew every eye dot as she rode down the main street. Whispers started among the few early risers, the shopkeeper wiping the counter, the blacksmith leaning on his hammer, the bartender stepping out for a quick glance. Who was she? Where had she come from? The air seemed to hum with curiosity. Rumors and speculation swirled before anyone even had the courage to speak. Some assumed she might be the daughter of a wealthy family who had fled an arranged life of luxury. Others thought she might be running from something more sinister, a heartbreak or scandal from afar. But Clara said nothing, offering only a polite nod to anyone who dared to meet her gaze. Her destination was the small general store at the edge of town, where she hoped to find work and a place to stay. It was here that she first caught the attention of Jackson, a rugged rancher who had lived on the outskirts for years. Jackson was a man of few words, tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-leathered skin and calloused hands from a life of labor. He had learned to live with solitude after a painful loss, retreating into the routines of ranch life and the comfort of his horses. While the townspeople were curious about Clara, Jackson's interest was quiet but intense. He noticed the way she handled her horse with steady confidence, the careful way she scanned the town without revealing her emotions, and the subtle grace with which she dismounted in front of the store. Clara stepped down and tightened the reins. The mare neighed softly in protest at the sudden stop. She gave a polite smile to the shopkeeper and asked about employment. Her voice was gentle yet firm, carrying the confidence of someone used to being self-reliant. She spoke little of her past, answering only the questions necessary to secure a job and perhaps a safe place to stay. As the morning wore on, it became clear to the town that Clara was no ordinary traveler. She carried herself with a dignity that commanded respect, yet there was an air of vulnerability beneath it, a hint of someone who had faced hardship but was determined to keep moving forward. The townspeople, who were used to predictable routines and familiar faces, found themselves intrigued. Who was this woman who had the courage to ride into Dry Creek alone, without fear and yet with the weight of untold stories behind her eyes? Meanwhile, Jackson observed quietly from a distance, sensing a spark in this stranger. There was something about her, perhaps her courage, perhaps her sorrow, that stirred a long dormant part of his heart. Little did he know, this encounter would mark the beginning of a life-changing connection, one that neither the town nor Jackson himself could have anticipated. Clara's arrival was more than just the entrance of a traveler. It was the start of a story that would surprise everyone, including Jackson, and change the course of their lives forever. The following morning, Dry Creek slowly awakened to the sounds of a bustling frontier town. Horses whinnied in their pens, the blacksmith's hammer clanged rhythmically against iron, and the scent of fresh bread wafted from the small bakery near the town square. Yet amidst this ordinary bustle, Clara's presence continued to stir quiet excitement. Word had spread about the mysterious woman who had arrived alone, confidently riding into town the day before. Clara's first task was simple. She needed to secure her place in this new town. She began helping around the general store, stocking shelves, tending to customers, and keeping the books neat. Her efficiency and calm demeanor quickly earned her cautious respect from the shopkeeper, Mrs. Whitaker, a plump, motherly woman with an eye for character. "You've got your wits about you, girl," Mrs. Whitaker remarked one morning, placing a freshly baked loaf on the counter. "This town's seen a lot, but it hasn't seen someone like you." Meanwhile, Jackson observed from a distance, leaning against the weathered wooden fence of his ranch. The rugged man had been wary of outsiders for years. Life on the frontier had taught him to protect not just his land, but his heart. Losing someone he loved had left him withdrawn, and though he couldn't have admitted it to anyone, the sight of Clara intrigued him. There was a quiet strength in the way she moved, a self-assurance that seemed rare in these parts. Yet suspicion lingered in his mind. Who was she? Why had she come here alone? And most importantly, could she be trusted? Clara's path soon crossed with Jackson's directly. One morning, while carrying a crate of supplies from the store to a nearby ranch, she stumbled slightly on the uneven dirt road. Jackson, riding past on his horse, noticed immediately. Without a word, he guided her crate steady, his strong hands brushing hers briefly. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment, her gaze wary, his guarded, and a spark of connection flickered between them. Both quickly looked away, uncomfortable with the intensity of the shared glance. Yet unable to shake the feeling that fate had played a hand in their meeting, over the next few days, Clara spent more time helping around Jackson's ranch, assisting with minor chores and feeding the animals. Jackson remained cautious, offering instructions in a clipped, careful tone, testing her patience and her resolve. Yet, beneath his wary exterior, he was impressed by her resilience and resourcefulness. Clara, on the other hand, recognized the pain in Jackson's eyes, the remnants of a loss he had never spoken of. She admired his quiet strength and found herself wanting to know the man behind the stoic exterior. Even as she remained guarded about her own past, their interactions were a delicate dance of tension and curiosity. Each glance, each small gesture, a hand brushing against a crate, a momentary pause in conversation, carried an unspoken electricity. The townspeople noticed the subtle chemistry, whispering amongst themselves about the unlikely pair. Some thought a romance was inevitable. Others doubted it could ever blossom from such cautious beginnings. By the end of the week, a fragile bond had begun to form. Clara's kindness and determination began to chip away at Jackson's defenses, while Jackson's quiet strength and protective nature slowly earned her trust. Both were aware of the invisible walls around their hearts, yet each interaction brought them closer, building a foundation of mutual respect and fascination. In the dusty town of Dry Creek, life continued as usual on the surface, but beneath it, a story was quietly unfolding. Sparks of attraction and suspicion danced between a mysterious newcomer and a guarded rancher, setting the stage for events that would test their courage, resilience, and capacity for love. Neither could foresee how deeply intertwined their fates would soon become, or how their connection would surprise everyone, including themselves. The morning air in Dry Creek carried a tense edge. The distant hills, usually a peaceful backdrop for the town, now seemed ominous under the rising sun. Clara had begun to settle into the rhythm of her new life, helping around the ranch and earning the quiet respect of the townsfolk. Yet an uneasy feeling nagged at her, a sense that the town, and perhaps her own new beginning, were not as safe as they seemed. Jackson had noticed it too. Something in the air told him that trouble was approaching, though he could not yet see its source. Life on the frontier had honed his instincts, and his protective nature flared whenever Clara was nearby. He had begun to feel an unfamiliar pull toward her, a mixture of admiration, concern, and something deeper he could not yet name. But Jackson's watchful eyes did not miss the subtle changes in Clara, either. her cautious glances toward the hills, the way she held herself ready for anything, and the quiet determination in her movements. That afternoon, the threat revealed itself. A band of outlaws, notorious in nearby counties for their ruthless tactics, rode into town. Their presence was first noticed by the blacksmith, who had seen them scouting from a distance, and then by others who whispered warnings among themselves. The townspeople, accustomed to living on edge, knew they had little chance if the bandits decided to target the town. Panic began to ripple through the streets. Clara, despite her initial fear, did not freeze. She had survived hardship before and knew instinctively when to act. Jackson, mounted on his horse, rounded up a few of the local men to defend the town, but he quickly realized that their numbers were insufficient to confront the outlaws head-on. It was in that moment that Clara and Jackson found themselves face to face, standing side by side in the center of the town. "Stay close," Jackson instructed, his voice firm but protective. Clara nodded, her heart racing, yet her eyes met his with unspoken understanding. Together, they moved strategically through the town, guiding frightened townsfolk to safety while keeping a watchful eye on the outlaws. Clara's quick thinking, blocking escape routes, warning the shopkeeper of approaching danger, and moving with remarkable calm, impressed Jackson more than he cared to admit. As the outlaws advanced, a moment of chaos forced Clara and Jackson into direct action. A stray shot from one of the gang members sent a barrel toppling dangerously close to Clara. Without hesitation, Jackson lunged, shielding her from harm. The close brush with danger sent a jolt through both of them, heightening a bond that had already been quietly forming. For the first time, Jackson allowed himself to fully acknowledge his feelings, a mix of admiration, protectiveness, and a stirring affection for the woman who had entered his life so unexpectedly. The skirmish was brief but intense. Through clever maneuvers and the combined efforts of the townspeople, the outlaws were driven back and forced to retreat, leaving the town shaken but unharmed. In the aftermath, the adrenaline faded, replaced by a quiet realization of what had occurred. Clara and Jackson, standing amidst the remnants of overturned barrels and scattered supplies, shared a glance that spoke volumes. They had faced danger together, relied on each other's courage, and discovered strength in one another. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the town began to recover, Clara and Jackson found a moment of solitude on the ranch's porch. The shared danger had broken down barriers, leaving room for trust, understanding, and an undeniable attraction. In the stillness of the desert night, both felt the stirrings of a connection that would grow even stronger in the days to come. They had survived the threat together, but more importantly, they had begun to recognize that their hearts might survive, and even flourish, together. The desert dawn painted Dry Creek in muted shades of gold and amber. The air carried the scent of sagebrush and the faint smoke of early morning fires. Clara sat quietly on the porch of Jackson's ranch, brushing the dust from her boots. The adrenaline from the skirmish with the outlaws had faded, leaving a reflective silence between her and Jackson. Their bond, formed in the heat of danger, had deepened, but both were acutely aware of the invisible walls surrounding their hearts. Clara had always been cautious about revealing her past. Life had taught her that vulnerability often invited betrayal. She had fled a wealthy family estate miles away after a painful betrayal. A trusted cousin had attempted to steal her inheritance, leaving her distrustful of anyone claiming to care for her. Though she had left behind wealth, she carried emotional scars that made trusting someone like Jackson feel simultaneously tempting and terrifying. Yet the events of the past days had made it impossible to remain completely guarded. One evening, after dinner, Jackson noticed her gaze lingering on the horizon. There was a distant sadness in her eyes, one he recognized from his own past. Gently, he asked, "You've been carrying something with you, haven't you?" Clara hesitated, the weight of years pressing down on her chest. Slowly, she began to share her story of the betrayal, the sudden departure from a life of comfort, and the loneliness that had driven her across the wild frontier. Her voice trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the release of long-held pain. Jackson listened in silence, his rough hands clasped together as he absorbed every word. He could sense her strength beneath the sorrow, her resilience in spite of the hardships. And in her story, he saw parallels to his own heartache. He, too, had a past that had shaped him, a loss that had left him wary of trusting anyone. Years ago, he had loved a woman deeply, his wife, and lost her to illness. The grief had driven him into solitude, dedicating himself solely to his ranch and avoiding any attachments that could reopen old wounds. For the first time in years, Jackson spoke openly about his past, revealing the vulnerability he had long hidden. He shared the memory of his wife's laughter, the daily routines they had cherished, and the aching void her absence left behind. Clara listened intently, realizing that beneath the stoic, guarded exterior lay a man capable of profound love and tenderness. Their shared confessions created a bridge between them, each revelation dissolving layers of caution and fear. The townspeople began to notice a change in their relationship. The whispered rumors that had once surrounded Clara now turned into admiration, as people witnessed the quiet care and mutual respect developing between her and Jackson. Friends and neighbors began to see that this wasn't a fleeting infatuation. There was depth, trust, and a growing sense of partnership between the two. That evening, under the vast canopy of stars, Clara and Jackson found themselves side by side on the ranch porch once more. Their hands brushed, an electric yet gentle reminder of the connection they were nurturing. Neither spoke, for words were unnecessary. The shared understanding of their pasts, their pain, and their emerging trust conveyed everything that needed to be said. By the time night fully settled over Dry Creek, a sense of quiet hope enveloped them. The barriers built by past hurts had begun to crumble, replaced with empathy, understanding, and a mutual recognition that love could grow even amidst hardship. Clara and Jackson had discovered that, while the frontier was unpredictable and often dangerous, it also held the possibility of new beginnings, and that their shared journey might lead to a love stronger than either had ever imagined. The dawn over Dry Creek was tinged with a quiet tension. Jackson and Clara had grown closer in recent days, their trust deepened by shared danger and the revelation of their pasts. But the frontier was rarely forgiving, and peace in such a town was often temporary. The same band of outlaws that had threatened the town before had returned, this time with a clear target: Jackson's ranch. Their motives were unclear, but the threat was unmistakable. The ranch, with its livestock and resources, represented both opportunity and leverage, and they were prepared to take it by force. Jackson noticed the first signs of their approach: distant hoofbeats that carried a rhythm he knew too well, the glint of sun on metal from afar. He immediately sprang into action, gathering a few trusted townspeople and preparing defenses around the ranch. Clara, though initially hesitant, refused to remain idle. She had come to care deeply for Jackson and the life he had built, and she was determined to stand by his side. Together, they began to strategize, using fences, wagons, and natural terrain to create barriers that would slow the outlaws and protect the ranch as the outlaws drew closer. The tension between Clara and Jackson shifted from quiet companionship to active collaboration. They communicated without words, instinctively understanding each other's movements and decisions. Clara's resourcefulness complemented Jackson's experience. She spotted vulnerabilities in the outlaw's approach that he might have missed, and he guided her actions with a calm authority that reassured her. The adrenaline of the moment left no room for hesitation. Survival demanded complete trust. The confrontation itself was swift and chaotic. The outlaws attempted to charge through the main gate, but Jackson and Clara had anticipated their tactics. A well-timed maneuver diverted their horses, while the townspeople, coordinated by Jackson, blocked alternative escape routes. Shots rang out, but no lives were lost. The defense was as much about strategy as courage. At one point, an outlaw aimed directly at Clara, forcing Jackson to throw himself between her and danger. She instinctively grabbed a rope, tripping the horse of the would-be attacker. Together, they neutralized the threat, their combined efforts a testament to both bravery and teamwork. After the outlaws fled, Jackson and Clara stood amidst the aftermath, broken fences, scattered supplies, and the lingering echo of gunfire. In the quiet that followed, both recognized the depth of their connection. The danger they had faced side by side had not only tested their courage, but also forged an unbreakable bond of trust. Clara, once cautious and guarded, now felt completely safe with Jackson. While he realized that her presence had rekindled feelings he thought were lost to grief and solitude died as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the ranch. Clara and Jackson shared a rare, unguarded moment. Sitting on the porch, hands intertwined, they reflected on the events of the day. The outlaws had tested their mettle, but the greater test had been of their hearts, their willingness to rely on each other, to fight not only for survival but for the promise of a shared future. It was in that moment that they silently acknowledged what had been growing between them, a love forged in danger, strengthened by understanding, and now unshakable in the face of adversity. Word of their bravery spread quickly through Dry Creek. The townspeople admired their courage and teamwork, and Clara's role in defending the ranch elevated her from a mysterious newcomer to a respected member of the community. Yet for Jackson and Clara, the public recognition was secondary. The true victory was the discovery of a partnership, one built on respect, courage, and a love that had survived its first true test. As night fell, the stars above the desert sky seemed to shine a little brighter, mirroring the spark that had ignited between them. They had faced danger together, and in doing so, had found a love that promised to endure far beyond the perils of the wild frontier. The town of Dry Creek was quiet once again, though the air still carried the echoes of the recent turmoil. The outlaws had retreated, their plans foiled by the bravery and quick thinking of Jackson, Clara, and the townspeople. Life on the frontier was never truly free of danger, but for now, a fragile peace had settled over the dusty streets and rolling hills. Yet for Jackson and Clara, the most profound change was not in the town around them, but in their own lives. The events of the past days had cemented a bond that neither had anticipated. Clara, who had arrived in town as a cautious stranger carrying secrets and scars, had found not only safety but a sense of belonging with Jackson. The rancher, whose heart had been closed for years, discovered that love could still be possible, that his grief and solitude were not permanent barriers. The shared experiences of survival, trust, and understanding had created a connection deeper than either had imagined. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose, Jackson and Clara walked together across the ranch. The air was filled with the soft sounds of evening, the lowing of cattle, the creak of the barn doors, and the distant call of a whippoorwill. Clara looked over at Jackson, her eyes reflecting both warmth and admiration. "I never expected to find something like this," she admitted softly. "Out here, in the middle of nowhere." Jackson stopped, turning to face her. He took her hands in his, roughened by years of labor, yet gentle in their touch. "Neither did I," he said, his voice steady and filled with sincerity. "I thought I was done with trusting anyone again. But somehow, you've changed everything." There was a long silence between them, not of uncertainty, but of unspoken understanding. In that quiet moment, the past that had once burdened them felt distant, replaced by the promise of a shared future. Word of their bravery and partnership spread quickly through Dry Creek. The townspeople, who had once viewed Clara as an enigmatic newcomer, now recognized her as an integral part of their community. Neighbors who had been skeptical of the mysterious woman on the chestnut mar now spoke in admiration of her courage, intelligence, and kindness. Jackson, too, was seen in a new light, not just as the stoic rancher, but as a man capable of love and loyalty, a protector not only of his land but of the people and heart he had come to cherish. In the days that followed, Clara made the decision to stay permanently at the ranch. She and Jackson worked side by side, tending to the land, caring for the animals, and building a life together. Their relationship flourished, rooted in mutual respect, shared experiences, and a deep emotional connection that had been tested and strengthened by adversity. The ranch, once a place of solitude and memory, became a home filled with laughter, warmth, and hope. On a quiet evening, Clara and Jackson stood on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the distant hills. The town lay peaceful below them, unaware of the profound transformation that had occurred not just in the lives of these two individuals, but in the story of the ranch itself. Clara's arrival had surprised the town. Jackson's openness had surprised them, but together, their love had surprised everyone, most of all themselves. The stars began to appear one by one, sparkling like distant promises in the night sky. Hand in hand, they gazed out at the land that had once been a place of hardship and solitude, now transformed into a symbol of resilience, partnership, and enduring love. In the heart of the Wild West, against all odds, Clara and Jackson had discovered something rare and precious, a love that could survive danger, heal old wounds, and defy every expectation. Their story, once just another tale of the frontier, became a legend, a testament to courage, trust, and the surprising power of love.